Welcome to the FIDE World Blitz Championships 2024 in New York. Today, we're witnessing a thrilling match between Magnus Carlsen, the reigning champion with an impressive 2890 rating, and Aleksandr Shimanov, a strong contender with a rating of 2623. Let's dive into the game and see how this exciting battle unfolds. Magnus opens with pawn to c4, the English opening, a flexible and modern choice that allows him to control the center indirectly. Shimanov responds with pawn to g6, preparing to fianchetto his bishop and challenge the center in hyper-modern style. Magnus immediately strikes in the center with pawn to e4, signaling aggressive intentions. Shimanov develops his bishop to g7, placing it on the long diagonal to put pressure on white's center. Magnus continues with pawn to d4, solidifying his control of the center. Black replies with pawn to d6, preparing to challenge white's center with pawn to e5. Magnus develops his knight to f3, targeting the e5 square and preparing for rapid development. Black pushes pawn to e5, challenging the center and creating tension. Magnus develops his knight to c3, reinforcing his central pawns and increasing pressure on the e5 square. Shimanov develops his knight to c6, attacking d4 and e5. Magnus plays bishop to g5, pinning black's knight on f6 to the queen, creating indirect pressure on the center. Shimanov responds with pawn to f6, breaking the pin and forcing the bishop to retreat. Magnus calmly moves the bishop back to e3, keeping it active while maintaining the integrity of his pawn structure. Black develops his knight to h6, possibly aiming to reposition it via f7 or g4. Magnus decides to open the center with pawn takes pawn on e5. Black recaptures with pawn takes pawn on e5, maintaining a strong center. Magnus simplifies with queen takes queen on d8, forcing the black king to take back on d8. Shimanov's king now loses the right to castle, leaving it slightly vulnerable. Magnus castles queenside, bringing his king to safety and placing his rook on the open d-file. Shimanov develops his bishop to d7, connecting his rooks and preparing to coordinate his pieces. Magnus plays pawn to h3, a prophylactic move that prevents black's knight or bishop from jumping to g4. Shimanov maneuvers his knight back to f7, repositioning it to defend key squares. Magnus strikes with pawn to c5, gaining space on the queen side and restricting black's light-squared bishop. Black moves his king to c8, stepping off the d-file and preparing to bring his rooks into play. Magnus develops his light-squared bishop to c4, placing it on a powerful diagonal aimed directly at black's king. Shimanov retreats his knight to d8, repositioning it to bolster his defenses. Magnus doubles his rooks on the d-file with rook to d2, applying maximum pressure. Shimanov develops his dark-squared bishop to e6, countering white's activity on the d-file. Magnus plays knight to d5, a centralizing move that creates threats and dominates key squares. Black counters with rook to e8, preparing to challenge white's rooks. Magnus doubles his rooks with rook to d1, increasing the pressure on the d-file. Shimanov repositions his knight to f7, trying to stabilize his position. Magnus pushes pawn to g4, gaining space on the king side and hinting at a future pawn storm. Shimanov plays pawn to a6, preparing to push pawn to b5 and activate his queenside pawns. Then comes a stunning move. Magnus sacrifices his knight with knight takes c7, targeting black's weakened king position. Shimanov, realizing there's no way to stop white's overwhelming threats, resigns. This game showcases Magnus Carlsen's brilliance in both strategy and tactics. From the early pawn sacrifice to the spectacular knight sacrifice on c7, Magnus demonstrated his unparalleled ability to combine creativity with precision. Shimanov fought valiantly, but against such relentless pressure, it's nearly impossible to hold. Another masterpiece by the world champion.